Welcome to Franchise Canada Chats, the podcast that takes you inside the world of Canadian franchising. I'm Renée Budakian, founder and CEO of Rubicon Franchise Partners, and your host for Season 9. This season, we're going beyond the business model to uncover the real stories of franchise owners, the risks they took, the lessons they learned, and the successes they built. Join us as we sit down with franchisees, their franchisors, and industry experts to discuss emerging trends, cutting-edge technologies, and operational strategies shaping the future of franchising. Whether you're thinking about buying your first or next franchise, this podcast is your inside track to franchise success in Canada. Welcome to Franchise Canada Chats. Today we're joined by Elijah Mack-Stirling, a franchisee with Kekuli Cafe and proud owner of 2 locations in British Columbia. Kekuli Cafe is Canada's first Indigenous fast casual restaurant franchise, and Elijah has been working with them since 2014 when he was still in high school. Since he was 12 years old, Elijah knew that he wanted to be his own boss and create a safe space for Indigenous youth. At the young age of 22, he became the owner of Merritt, BC's Kekuli Cafe and went on to purchase a second location in Kamloops. Elijah has found immense support with the Kekuli Cafe system, and its team has championed his success as a business owner. Today, he sits down with us to share his story. Elijah, thank you for joining us on Franchise Canada Chats.
Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. I'm so excited to talk about your story, to hear more about it. And I would just love to get right into it. So you had started working at Kekuli Cafe when you were in high school, and you had some managerial experience working at McDonald's. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your work background, what your life was like before you became a franchise owner, and what led you to taking over the Merritt location?
Yeah, I was working at the McDonald's location in Merritt, and I bring that up because the owner there, she really helped get me into the manager position within McDonald's, and so I was there for about 4 years, which is when I left to go work for Sharon Bond at Kekuli. So it's kind of cool because it was a really big hype. The Merritt location is located right downtown Merritt. It's the first time that I'm hearing of somebody that is Indigenous, that's successful. Like it's kind of opening those doors. And so I made the jump and left McDonald's to go work for Kekuli. I think I was 18 years old. Yes, I was in high school still. Um, Walked in, didn't know what to expect out of this. It's completely brand new. All I knew that was I wanted to work. I wanted to be around the culture, and I wanted to feel like I had a place that I belonged because it's just it's the first and it's brand new, and that it's very exciting times. Um, a fun fact is that my father, he knew the owner. They went to school together, so he was like, "Hey, this is my son. He's looking for a job. He's coming from McDonald's, and blah 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 blah." And we fast forward, and she's like hired me on the spot, and it's kind of cool because like we've come so far in the franchise together. And so that was like the early years. Eventually, like while I worked both jobs for a little while, and then Sharon just kept over scheduling me, and she just kept working me into her restaurant, and it was kind of like she was setting me up to take over. And then I began managing for about a year and a half. And I was kind of like not sure what to do. I don't know. I was a high school dropout. I went back and finished. I was like when I was 20. So my entire 21st year of living, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. But I know it's not going to be working for someone for the rest of it. Like I just wasn't happy. And so I told Sharon, like, I think I'm gonna go find something to do. Like maybe I'll go back to school, maybe I'll move. And at that time she was just like, absolutely not. So her and her husband sat me down. They took me for lunch and they were just like, um, we like everything you're doing. You're doing awesome, blah, 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 blah. And they were just like, we want to sell you the restaurant. And at that time, I was 21, about to be 22. And I was thinking, like, what in the world is happening right now? Because I just had graduated like high school a year and a half prior to that. And I was thinking, there's absolutely no way that someone my age with my background is going to buy into this franchise. I was like, it's just unheard of. And so, all the emotions are going through like, am I capable? What does the hours look like? What is the responsibility? You have so many questions. And naturally, I went home and I was like, Mom, like, guess what? Something happened. And I was like, I need your support because I don't make any decisions without her. She's just been so like my biggest support system. And so she was, asking me questions that I didn't know either. And it came down to, what, like if anybody's gonna do it, it's gonna be you. She's like, and I will support any decision you make. That's kind of like what led me into saying, what, like I'm 21 years old. I can buy into this franchise. I can spend the next 10 years paying loans and I'll still be 31. And I could just walk away clean slate and I could start a whole new life. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. It's an opportunity. I'm gonna kick myself if I don't take it. And so I did it. I jumped and it's been quite the journey ever since.
I love that. And I think there's something so unique and really special about starting and trying things at a young age because you give yourself the opportunity of really you have so much time, and it's not a function of starting something in your 20s, 30s, 40s. I think that time is kind of irrelevant for the most part, but I think that when you try something when it's young, when you're younger, you give yourself that opportunity to really see, like, is this for me? And as you said, by the time you're 31, if you wanted to make a complete pivot and shift, you could have done that and like had a lifetime with Kekuli. But that's not the way your story has gone. You have in fact gone deeper into the brand and now own two locations. So that is super exciting and something that I think also having good support systems, like you mentioned, your mom, when you're younger and you're just kind of entering adulthood, really, you're just graduating from high school and the world's your oyster and what's next. It's really important, I think, to have good support and good sounding boards around you because um, you're kind of figuring out, like, what do I want to do in life, and is this for me? So I think that that's great that you had that support from your mom and she encouraged you, because now you're a multi-unit franchisee with Kekuli, so that's super exciting. One of the things that I know is that you wanted to be your own boss from a really young age, and I'm wondering if you considered franchising in that be your own boss, or if you were thinking more of independent ownership. Like when you wanted to be your own boss, what did that look like to 12-year-old Elijah?
Yeah, it's crazy because I can remember that exact moment. I'm sitting in the van with my mother, and we're driving to our home community in Bella Coola, and I remember having this conversation with her because we we come from a big family, and so we lose a lot of people in our lives, and we're driving home to a funeral, and it was not a good time. And at that time, I was thinking, you know what, like I feel so hopeless. And so rather than, continuing to meddle in that sense of loss and hopelessness, I was like, well, one day I'd like to be my own boss because I really don't like people telling me what to do. Like that's not in my category. And the other part was like, okay, I also want to have the safe space where youth can come and they can be themselves because it wasn't common and it's still not as common. Um, but like back in those early days, it was like there was no support for people of color, and the racism and the discrimination was so raw, and there was no stigma around breaking that or having that reconciliation. And so it was just like, okay, these are two things I want to do in life. I want to be my own boss, and I want to have a space where I can create space for like a safe space for youth. And so at that time, it wasn't like I'm going to go and own this franchise and I'm going to go and be this successful entrepreneur, because it's unheard of. But as a child, you don't think about those things. You think about, oh, I'm going to be a teacher, or I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a lawyer, or a police police officer. That is like the way that mainstream goes. And so for me, it was just like that's kind of what all my friends are doing, so that's probably what I'm going to do too. Um, to today, it's just like, well, no, the world really is your oyster, and you really could do whatever you want. Um, and a lot of that comes from like embracing those opportunities. And one thing that I was told is like, you have to be uncomfortable to be successful. And it's been so raw lately because it's just like everything in my life is uncomfortable right now. But it's just, part of the price we pay as being a successful entrepreneur. So, and going back to that, having that support system, there's so many people in my corner over the years that it would be hard to name all of them. I used to also be in the Friendship Center movement. I don't think I put that in there, which is kind of crazy because it was a big part of my life as well. Um, I was handpicked by Dr. Sharon McIver and Teresa Nahaney, who are very big names in the political world, that changed and shaped laws for us. And, they brought me into the Friendship Center movement to run for board of directors at the age of 20. So I did this before I franchised. And then I became the vice president for British Columbia. And I became the youth representative for Canada. And then I became the president for British Columbia. And I helped with this youth conference called Gathering Our Voices. And, I worked alongside Annette Morgan, who was a really big supporter, Leslie Barley, who's a big supporter. That they all helped shape me to who I am today. And so I take this grassroots movement from a nonprofit perspective, and I take this grassroots movement from a business perspective. And I've managed to just live this incredible life of so many opportunities.
I think that's incredible, and it really comes through that promoting empowerment of youth is something that is very central to and very important. If we go back to your journey of being a young franchisee, being 22, do you think there are any particular benefits or challenges associated with being a young business owner?
Yeah, I look at like today's challenges that I go through versus the challenges I went through back then, and it's like there's that, famous saying of like, if I knew what I knew now back then, right? It's like if I had the knowledge I have today, what would I do differently back then? And I can't really um focus on that because it's just part of my journey, right? The
Mm-hmm.
challenges I had at 21 and 22 were so very minor because you're so young and you're full of ambition, and this can happen at any age, but the young in the way of like you're just starting out. So whether you're 20 or 50, that fresh mindset of like not knowing, um, I think the challenges was like, is this going to work? Is one of them. Can I handle the pressure? Is another one. And the last one is like, what is financial literacy or financial management? Those are like three things that I've struggled in forever. Um, but and now with like today, it's just like, okay, I still don't know what financial literacy is or financial management. But if you were to sit here and ask me questions about it, I'd probably be able to tell you a lot. It's just with time, you just learn, right? And the rest of them is just like one thing that I'm constantly reminded is you get what you put in. So whatever you're gonna put into your business is what you're gonna get out of it. If you're only gonna do a bare minimum, you're only gonna get a bare minimum. So that doesn't mean you have to work yourself to the grave. No, it just means you have to work smarter. Sharon always tells me, and Darren always tells me as well, he's like, you work in your business, Eli, then you go work on your business. And so I'll go work the mornings, then I'll spend the time with the staff and set with my customers that come in, and we know quite a bit of them. And after all that's done, then I get to come home and start working on my business. So you really get what you put into it. And for a while there, I wasn't putting a lot in and not a lot was coming out. And so it's just the school of hard knocks is something you have to learn.
Yeah, I mean, experience is a teacher that you can't replace. But I think that hearing from those who have walked the path, for our listeners, hearing from those who have walked the path before them, it can just help them to go into it with a little bit um, more knowledge in what to expect. But I do think that there is you can know you can know that Canada exists, but until you've been there, like, and had the experience of actually traveling, or you can read about riding a bike, but until you actually ride the bike, you're not going to have that experience. So I completely agree with you. And I also agree about the you get what you put into it. And I think that that's true of all business in the sense that and I love that you said like still work life balance and with not needing to work yourself to the grave, but at the same time, you need to have balance. You need to have balance in when you're working in the business so that you can make sure to, see if there's opportunities for creating efficiency, creating strong team culture and connectivity with your customers, but then also moving things forward that you really as the owner needs to spend time on, whether that's let's say hiring or recruiting a new initiative that you want to try. Like, you don't have time to think about those things if you're always in the business. So I think balance is important. If we go back to when you purchased the Merritt location, I would say that being young and thinking about buying a business, the most daunting thing is the actual capital. Youth might think that like, oh, I could never access that, or it would be difficult for me to access that. I'd love for you to share how did you gather the capital to invest in the business, and any advice that you have for new entrepreneurs, especially young people who are looking to obtain funds for their business? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, that was a tough one because there's so many ways to go about it. There's obviously you need to learn how to save money and build credit. Those are the two biggest things. If you don't have money in your account and you don't have a good credit, then they just kind of like look at you and look away. Um, and that's not something that we talk about in school either. And I have three younger brothers, and from the get-go, I've been like, okay, we're going to work on your credit and we're going to work on financial management because the world will not look at you if you don't have those two. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just like this is where the business plan comes in handy because it sets you up in a position where you can work towards a goal. And so you take the project cost from start to finish. And most places require like a 10% down payment. And 10% is not a whole lot if it's a franchise like ours where it roughly costs about 450 to 500,000 for like a turnkey operation. And so you need approximately like 45 to 50,000 in your account. Um, in savings. And so with me, I had some in savings put away. And thankfully I had like both my parents that were able to like invest some of their money. And so they've helped me kind of bridge that little bit of gap that I needed. And so they were able to help like loan me some money, which I repaid back. To get that working capital. And then once the first business is going, like I finally understand why people buy so many businesses is because like you buy one, you build the capital, you build a name, and then now you have like a business plan for a franchise, which helped me open up my second location. So I was able to like manage more and bring more income in and kind of show that like, hey, we're a successful business. Please help fund this project.
Yeah.
And one thing that like a lot of people don't realize is, pardon me, is that there's so many opportunities for like grants out there. Um, I think I've had about three grants in the last like 5 years that will be either like a 40% forgivable, or like a fully non-repayable grant. And so that money really helps. And it's just like you just do your research and you'll be amazed at what comes up. You'll be amazed at how much money doesn't get spent and goes back to the government.
I love that. And I think that that's super helpful and practical advice. And also just opening the eyes of a prospective franchisee to know that even when you're, especially when you're young, but uh, business Canada does want to fund businesses. Like they want more businesses, but you do have to put in the work. You need to have a solid business plan, and you do
Hmm.
need to have some capital, but the lion's share of it, you could potentially, with, as you said, with good credit and a solid business plan, and some savings, you can get a lion's share of it. Like they're not asking you to come up with 50%. They're asking you to come up with like a really small amount that makes it accessible, especially when you feel that you've aligned with like a great brand like Kekuli Cafe. So I'd love to know now that you have two locations, both the Merit and the Kamloops, how did you know it was the right time for the second location? Tell me a little bit about the process of going from a single unit to a multi-unit franchisee, and how did you know it was the right time?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch back on the financing part. So the federal government has a program called the Canadian Small Business Financing Act. And so with that, the government will now cover, I believe it's 75 to 100% liability on small business finance loans, through like selected banks. So I know like RBC and BMO both are eligible to apply for this. And so the bank takes no liability when it comes to your loan. So it's easier for the approval process. And not a lot of people know that. And so if you're thinking about kind of like going into franchising, there's an act specifically for opening your franchises. So I just want to throw that out there because not everybody knows about it.
Yeah,
Um,
no, for sure. That is a super valuable resource for the listeners to know about that this exists, this program exists, funding program, loan program exists, and definitely go and check that out. We'll throw a link in the show notes.
yeah, and then sorry, the question about going from a single unit to a multi-unit. I developed this theory within myself that uh, don't make any decisions in the first 2 years of doing anything new. Because in those first 2 years, the first 24 months, it is so wild. Your journey just it goes left, right, center, and you're all over the map. And so in the first year, it's all learning about all the quirks and figuring out all the kinks and making your machine run well. The second year, you're learning how to operate with the systems that you've built. And in those first 2 years, I think you're so deeply invested into the business that it's like you can't make a right decision in those 2 years because you're so focused on making sure your business is successful. So I don't think it's valuable to be like, okay, in my first year, I think I could do it again because you're still learning how to operate.
Mhm.
With Merit, I was learning how to run the business in finances and going from being an employee to an employer. And so once the first 2 years happened, I was like, okay, I think I'm doing okay. That's when I introduced the Camels location. So I spent some research on like what is it going to be for the cost of living because I'm going to have to move. What is my time split going to be like? Thankfully, I'm only 45 minutes away from the other location, so the transport was a bit more feasible. Um, and then ultimately, like, can I invest my time into this? is you have to sacrifice quite a bit of time in the first couple of years. Like I'm not going to get to see my family much. I can't play slow pitch because I love to play slow pitch. I can't do those social outings or I can't travel because I need to make sure my business is okay. So, first 2 years, don't make any decisions, any big life decisions. And that's what it came down to. I'm now in my third year of owning Kamloops, and this past year I had a big trial, like personally, and in the business is like I'm spreading myself too thin. So I needed to refocus, and I didn't make any decisions. That an opportunity came up where I could have potentially opened up a third location, but at the time I was not in the right place or mind. So I just thought, you know what, like I'll give it another year and see how it is then. And so that's kind of how I determine what I'm going to do next.
I think that's amazing. And I think having kind of those decision making frameworks is super helpful because you followed your own framework. You said, well, I'm not going to make any big decisions. So you didn't make any big decisions for the third location, even when opportunity arose. And I think that that's a very disciplined, being disciplined is a very good skill set to have, especially as a business owner. So you're not doing things just based on emotion, because emotions can, have us doing things that are not necessarily what are in our best interest long
Mhm.
term. Um, so as you've gone from one location to two, have you seen or observed in your own self that like your role has changed, or would you say it's quite similar from one to two? How, if at all, has your role changed in now having two locations to manage?
Yeah, the role definitely changes, and I think about how it'll change because I feel like I'm going to open up another location, just because the stars will align. I know it will. Um, but I think about what it was like to be an employee, to an employer, to being a multi-employer. Now I have like I think like 35 staff between both locations. Um, So the difference I found between the two is like you have to treat your staff well. If you don't treat your staff well, then I'm sorry, it's just not going to work. You can
Mm-hmm.
ask any entrepreneur that, like, it will not work if you don't treat your staff well because your staff are like the beating heart of your operations. Um, and thankfully, I have such amazing staff. Like my two managers, like Deborah, I worked with her at McDonald's almost 15 years ago, and and now she's like managing my Merritt location, and she's been with me for 7 years since I hired her, and she worked for Sharon and Darren. She transitioned with me from when I bought the restaurant, and she's just been running the restaurant ever since. So I fully trust her. She looks after all the operations for me. I work with her and her only, and I let her build the team, kind of like what Sharon and Darren did with me. And although like I live in Kamloops and I spend most of my time here, I still have a manager. Her name is Colleen. She works for me here, and she's just phenomenal. And I treat it the same way as in Merritt because if one day I decide to leave and go open up another location, I need to have full confidence that she could be on her own here. And so that is like probably the best and only advice I can give is just trust your staff, empower them to, be their own boss as well.
I think that's fantastic advice. And I think truly when you go from one location to two locations to potentially three, four, five, you can't do it all on your own. It's physically impossible to even be in two locations at once. So having a really strong team, and building that team that you can rely on, that you support, and it's a very symbiotic relationship is very important in growth. So I think that that is fantastic advice. You've shared that you have received quite a lot of support from the beginning, really from the founders. And what I would love to hear from you is what kind of support, when we talk about support, what kind of support did you experience at the very beginning when you decided to go from um, taking the plunge to becoming a business owner to now being a multi-unit franchisee, what kind of support systems were there at the beginning to help you transition into becoming an owner? And then what do you lean on currently today from your franchisor to provide you support with?
Yeah, that's a tough question, but it's not because the support that I had when I first started out, like, and forgive me because this is gonna get emotional, but I look back and so many times I'll just kind of like sit here, and most times it's in silence, and I think about everything that I've been through, and I think about, you know, all the trials, and it's very humbling because you take so much for granted. You take time for granted, and you take, the support for granted, and because you're so like young and naive, and you want everything to be right, and life comes in and just knocks you down so many times. And so the support I had in the beginning, the biggest one was like I could call on my mom or my dad or my brothers, and I could say, like, I'm having a really bad day today, and I'm gonna tell you why. And they would just listen. And sometimes they would give advice and sometimes they wouldn't. But the fact that I could just call them and um, just express myself, I think goes a long way. And sometimes it would be like a friend that from high school or relatives from back in my home community that are like 9 hours away from me, just to call them and say, hey, like, this is what's going on, or I just need you to be present. Um, and that was kind of like the emotional part of it. And emotions have so much to do with how you operate because you don't realize how much it affects you on a daily basis. And so I had the emotional piece covered because I had my family. I had everyone tells me it's my tribe. I had my tribe with me, and I knew that I was going to be okay as long as I had my tribe. And it's a two-way street with them too, like I was there, I had to be there for them just as much as they were there for me. And then you look at the entrepreneur side of support. And so Sharon and Darren had been in this business 10 years before I even stepped foot into that restaurant. And the amount of like trial and errors that they've been through, being the first indigenous like fast casual cuisine, like that has you could write a book on how much challenges they had just opening their doors. And so they've been there, done that. And as long as I had them in my corner, I knew I could call them at any time and just be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I need your help. And I think that's like so beneficial to having a franchise is like I have the corporation and I have the franchisors and they're like family to me as well. So I can lean on these people when I need to. And it's so incredible because like I've won a few awards in my lifetime and I've been acknowledged in so many different places. And it's like one thing I always say is like, this isn't just for me. This is for every person that has helped me along the way too. I'm sorry, it's my name that's put up on there, but the credit is to them as well.
I think that's so heartwarming because it's true. The support that we get along the way in our journeys and our stories is so meaningful, and can be so meaningful to us and really helping to shape where we end up going. And um, so I think that that's incredible, and incredible that you're part of a brand that offers such great support. Um, when we when we think about what kind of unique experiences you've had now being a franchisee, what would you say that being a franchise owner, a business owner, has allowed for you from a lifestyle perspective?
I was, I love this one because, um, well, first of all, like when I like my friends group, we have a bit of like business owners in my friends group, which is nice. But I have a lot of like day one people that were with me in high school, were with me before high school. Like one of my best friends, we've been best friends since we were like 6 years old. And she's got to see my entire life just like unfold, and it's pretty cool. And then I have like friends that I went to school with, or I had friends that I met along with the Friendship Center movement. And the new friends that I meet, or like I think about the ball community, like it's such an amazing community. And sometimes work gets brought up, most times it doesn't. But it's like, you know what? Like I'm very privileged to be in my position because I can create my own hours and I can be my own boss. And I don't really answer to anybody. Like it's just me, myself, and I when it comes to who I am as an entrepreneur. And so I feel very privileged to be like, I'm gonna set my hours this week, being mindful of you get what you're putting into it. So it's like if I'm gonna take the week off, because I do, like I took off to Mexico last year for 12 or 13 days, and the restaurants were perfectly fine. But I knew that before that 12 or 13 days, I had to work extra hard, and I knew that when I got back, I had to work extra hard. Um, it's not a casual 9 to 5 job or 8 to 4 job. You kind of make your own hours. So I feel very privileged in so many ways.
I love that. Um, what I'd love to ask of you is just your advice or your maybe perspective is a better word to use um, about are there any parts of the business that have been more challenging than you expected being in the business owner seat and your experience now running the business for so many years? Are there any parts of the business that you didn't anticipate were going to be as challenging as they have been, and how have you faced those challenges?
Yeah, two things. The first thing that comes to mind is the finances. Finances is such a vital piece in your operations. Like it's everything, and what's in your account isn't really in your account. Like you can have X amount of dollars today, but it'll be gone tomorrow. So understanding the financial piece of what's coming in versus what's going out is so fundamental in your operations. It's just every day I'm just like, okay, I see there's money there. What's coming out next? I don't know where that money's going, and I need to understand where that money's going. And so that part has been the most challenging part for me. It's just like a dollar's not a dollar anymore, or I was told you only get 100 pennies in a dollar. How are you going to spend those pennies? And it's just like it can be so frustrating at times. But that's why like I love this franchise so much is because I could call Darren. I mainly call him because he's like the mastermind behind a lot of like the operational piece. So I'll call him and I'll be like, hey, like I don't understand what's happening. Can you please help me out? And he'll be able to identify it for me, and then hopefully I learn from that. So it's such a big piece. So if I were to like, if my brother was to decide to go into business, because both of them have brought up like hey, I'm gonna be my own boss one day. So if I were to say something, I would say go take a financial management course. Even if it's like 6 to 8 weeks, go and understand what it's like to read a budget plan or an audit report, or like just go and understand a little bit of it so you know where your money's coming and going. Um, and the second piece to that would be I don't even know. I think financial is a big chunk of it. And I just keep saying it because it's so important.
Yeah, it's number one and number two.
Yeah.
Well, in spite of some of the challenges, which it sounds like you face those challenges with just trying to continue to get help and support, even if you don't have the answers, then you go to your franchisor, let's say, as an example, to help them get you the answers. And I think that that is a very important quality in a business owner is just the resourcefulness that you don't have to have all the answers, but you do need to be resourceful to go find the answers. So in spite of business having its ups and downs, what do you say that makes in the face of some of the challenges that you go through, what makes business ownership so worth it? Like what is the pieces of being your own boss, that vision you had for yourself when you were 12 years old? what would you sum up and say that this is why I love being a business owner?
Yes. It's so easy to get lost in the middle of all the challenges. There's so many challenges when it comes to running a business. But the reward is so worth it because when you're lost in the chaos, or you're lost in the realm of unknown. um, I had a kid come up to me uh, recently and was like, "I heard you talk one time, like 5, 6 years ago, and it helped me get through so many challenges." And it's just like, okay, like I don't even know who this person is, and they're just like, thank you for sharing your story. And that's why I will take every interview that I can, because I've had times where people have come up to me and said, "Oh, I was in business school, but I heard your speech one time and it helped me get through that class." And it's just like you don't realize how much impact you have until someone like that comes along. And so I think about those nights where I was crying. I think about those nights where like I've just been at work for 20 hours. I don't know if I can keep doing this. And I think about those times where I've had to sacrifice my social life or my personal life to be in this invested in this business. And it makes it so much worth it. And to hear like my brothers are my pride and joy, and everything I do is for them and for their future. And to hear them say, like, my brother is Elijah Mack, they're so proud. They carry so much pride when it comes to, he's my brother and I'm going to be like him when I grow up. And it's just like, you know what? It was worth it. It was so worth it. And I can never regret anything I ever do for the rest of my life, because you went from, can I do it? Or is that even possible, to, one day this is going to happen. And it's just, I have a lot to be grateful for.
I think that that's beautiful. And having a really strong root in your why and like the thing that makes you like keeps you going is what I think that a lot of entrepreneurs who go the distance need and have, because as I said, it's not always going to be easy, but it's worth it. And when you have that strong connection to why it's worth it, it keeps you going even in the most toughest of days, but also makes you feel very grateful in your best of days. So I think that that's incredible. I would love to ask you, Elijah, what would be advice that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur who's maybe at a fork in the road, maybe considering, do I go and start my own business, which you could have done, or do I go down the franchising pathway? What advice would you give to someone who's kind of like not quite sure about franchising and if franchising is for them?
Yeah, I might go off at a little bit of a tangent here, only because I think this part of my journey kind of wraps all into one. In I know we're coming up in near our end here, but um, what I didn't mention was that, like, I had three brothers and I have a sister as well. But my one brother, he went missing a couple of years ago, February 27th, 2023. And that time was like so chaotic, and it still is to this day because we haven't found him. Um, but he was my best friend. He was my everything. Everything I did was with him or for him, and we were joined at the hips, and we spent every single day together, um, leading up to his disappearance. And one day he just disappeared. He went into someone's house and never came out again. And I get these flashbacks from that time of like the searches that we did, the interviews that I had, um, like trying to be the glue for my family when we had so much unknown. And it's still quite raw today because every single day someone goes missing, and every time you open social media or you watch the news, there's a report about someone going missing, and it just takes a little jab at you because you wonder if you're ever gonna find him, or if you're ever gonna find your relative. And this plays such a big part in my journey because I could have just given up and walked away. I still could. Today I could just give up and walk away. And so many times I want to. And I think about how my family became stronger together. And I think about how um, my businesses were still striving in such a trial time. I was able to step away for 6 weeks and just let them be, you know, let them do what they do best. And I had so much confidence in them that they just were able to operate for 6 solid weeks. I didn't step foot in my restaurants because I was so focused on finding him. And I think about that time and like so many times I just wanted to give up. I cannot tell you how many times. And then, you go through all the first birthdays, the first Christmas, the first holidays, and it gets harder and harder and harder until like last November, and then we lost our father. He passed away. And he was such a key part in everything I do today. And so again, like I could just give up and walk away. And so many times I just want to. And it's so important to know this because during these challenges in my personal life, during these challenges in the business life, um, I could just give up and walk away. And I don't because I have that strong root. I have, a solid system that works. I have an amazing franchise that looks after me. And I have so many good people in my corner that never leave my side. And so when it comes down to this question, I had to give that backstory because so many people see the success in being an entrepreneur that you forget about all the hard times that you've been through. So I like to be humbled by you could have $1 million in your pocket, but tomorrow your brother could go missing and your whole life can change. So, it's important to appreciate everything that you have. And when I think about when I was approved for those finances and when I think about when I was presented this opportunity, yes, I could go out and start my own business. I can go out and do whatever I want, and I can, branch off and just be who I want. But I don't think I could ever do it on my own because the franchise offers so much support and so much opportunity that it's like the value of being in a franchise, it's just it's so grand because I could not have been able to be successful if I didn't have that support. So I think like if anybody's thinking about it, take that next step. And like if you think about you can spend the next 5 to 10 years paying out that loan and just walk away like scratch free. So that would be my advice is you could, but why would you when it's all built for you already? And that's one thing I love about Kekuli is that like as soon as you sign that paper saying this is what you want to do, we help you from building those relationships to opening your doors. And it's so strong and valuable.
Thank you, Elijah, for sharing that. That was, I mean, it's truly shows like the all the sides, and I'm so sorry to hear about your brother as well, and also the passing of your father. But I think that you have a tremendous grit in continuing to see all the positivity and be extremely focused on helping yourself, your family, the youth, your community. And so I just wanted to share that with you as well. Um, I'd love to hear what does 5 years from now, where would you like Elijah to be in 5 years from now? Like, what do you see the future looking if we kind of take a peek 5 years down the road?
That, I love that question because like 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm gonna own so many restaurants. I'm thinking because like the first year was so easy, or the second year became easier, that like this is what I'm gonna do. But what the last couple of years have taught me has been like, you know what? No, that's probably not gonna happen, or it might happen, because life can come and sideswipe you, and the world just keeps moving. So in like giving myself goals and setting myself up for the next 5 years, I don't know what I would like to do because I'm a little scared to take that next step of what else is gonna happen. I've had so much trauma in my life that I can't really look forward to it. But it's important to sit down and have a conversation like this and be like, you know what, I think in the next 5 years, I would like to have that third location. And another dream of mine that I've always had has been like, I want to own my own house because that's something I don't have yet. So I think those would be the two like realistic goals for myself in the next 5 years.
I think those are amazing goals. And I look forward to hopefully continuing to follow along and see those goals come to fruition in your journey. Well, Elijah, I just have one more question I would love to ask of you, which is this. What is one truth about franchising that you know now that you didn't know when you first bought the business?
Oh goodness. Um, okay, a truth I do know is that like they say when a very stereotypical saying is that when you go into a franchise, you can no longer like do your own thing. And that scares a lot of people. Like you have to follow rules, but you have to follow rules for a reason. And the reason is because it works. So that stereotype of like if I buy into the franchise, I can't change things. I think it's wrong because when you go into a franchise, the franchisors can't operate their franchisors without the franchisee support. And so you become a voice at a table that people don't know exists.
I think that's an incredible truth and that you've shared. So thank you so much for joining us, Elijah. It was a pleasure having you on Franchise Canada Chats. And I look forward, I hope to see more Kekuli cafes all across Canada. And I hope to get to try in the near future very soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything.
Thanks for listening to Franchise Canada Chats. I'm Renée Budakian with Rubicon Franchise Partners, and this podcast is produced by Joelle Kidd with the Canadian Franchise Association. Missed an episode? You can find Franchise Canada Chats on Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. For expert insights, success stories, and franchise opportunities, visit franchisecanada.online. And while you're there, subscribe to Franchise Canada e-News, a trusted resource for aspiring franchisees looking to achieve their dreams and build their franchise future. If you're exploring franchise ownership, check out lookforafranchise.ca or learn more about franchising at cfa.ca. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.